action. Test. Hello. Woo! Woo! Never mind. I can call with the best of them. All right, let's get. Thank you, everyone. By the way. All right, we're going to bring the Montego Regional Planning Commission meeting to order. This is our official monthly meeting. All right, I'm going to do roll call again. Richard Black. Here. Janet Miller-Schmidt. Here. Ed Provo. Here. Drain Parmley. Here. Peter Beasley. Here. Marilyn Rodman. Here. Michelle Russell. Here. All right. In our packets, we have the minutes from the April 5th meeting. I know that you have looked diligently at all of these. There was a correction that Janet had made on doing the workshops.
I don't think I updated the one that I had in the printed agenda, but it's updated in our drive.
It's updated.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, I get it up.
Okay, so it's updated in the packet. Any corrections, additions? And if not, I need a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. I need a second.
Second.
All those in favor? All opposed? All right, motion carried. Approval of minutes. Staff and community reports. Planning staff report. Anya
had 2 minor subdivisions come in the last couple months, and both staff approved. I think I emailed both of them to you once.
All good.
Yeah, all good.
Okay. Building inspector's report. Earl is not going to be able to be here today. Did he have you any questions?
I didn't get the livestock stock question ahead of time, but for the R1, I think I also emailed all y'all about we have no jurisdiction on R1 design.
As long as it meets codes and life safety.
Yes, exactly.
For the house.
For the barn house studio in R1. So that's good.
Yes, and I can talk to Earl too if he has any questions.
And the Dale Lane animal. C2.
He didn't reach out to me about that. So
okay.
I don't know anything about that.
Okay. Well, those were his 2 issues. Is the agriculture? I guess it would be agricultural use. And it's in C2.
But the acreage is not.
But the acreage is what's keeping him from having his animals. Because it's 50. How many acres is it?
I think you have to have more than 50.
And he has 36. Any discussion on that? Any thoughts?
I assume they'll have to bring it to us, right?
Mm-hmm. Any initial thoughts?
I don't know what we have to talk about.
Okay. All right. Very good. Old business. New website information. Janet.
We have gotten approval from Earl about the proposed website for Planning Commission, and we are waiting now to put it up online. But I also wanted to know if we wanted to include in there some of the new things that we've gotten about a checklist for the people who are looking to get a building permit, and our new zone guidelines for the plans. I want to know if we want to put that in or not. Well, I have to get them in here before they can be approved.
So the idea of a checklist.
Yes.
I would think so.
I would think so as well. Lorraine?
I'm for it. Yep. Okay.
Marilyn?
Yeah.
Ed?
I'm good with
Peter?
Yep.
All right.
Okay, then I'll work on that and get it out to you guys, okay?
Okay, very good. Joint IDA-IES model lighting ordinance. Mayor Rodman.
That's something we're looking at once we do the downtown corridor land use agreement. Because we had tabled.
I thought y'all tabled it last month.
We did table it because it's part of that process. To clarify, we are continuing the downtown corridor development plan. There's another survey to go out. It is instrumental in what's being discussed here, sir. I think the next grant maybe. So that will be part of that. So let's just move it on for a while.
I also thought that Nate's recommendation last time that we developed something because of all this commercial coming in, that at least we have the high end, but we were going to have a workshop.
Yeah, then we haven't had a workshop yet. We need to schedule a workshop independently from this. So we can do that after this.
Anya, workshop?
Workshop.
I know. All right.
Yeah, is it gonna be a workshop that's prior to the DC, like the one we just had, or is it gonna be, are you
It's gonna be
anticipating?
separate.
Okay.
Just will talk about this, I assume, right?
I would like to have a lighting expert available. It's not something that I'm familiar with, but I can talk to Nate and maybe we can brainstorm who to reach out to and have at that workshop.
Do we want to set a date now, or do we want to hold
But
on?
I want to hold on until Nate and I can talk and figure out who we could bring on board to help with this process.
Okay. So we are going to table this.
And we can have conversations after this meeting about when you want to.
Okay. All right, very good. All right, new business. Convenience and retail store, 740 West Main Street. Who's here representing that? Hey, all right, come on up. Oh, right there on the podium, yep.
You need the map.
Oh, we love that.
And I have the most recent one as well, printed on 11 by 7 sheets.
Thank you.
Just paper clip them off.
Okay.
That's what it was on the pile. Thank you. I need one for our meeting.
Oh, sure.
This is the big one. Yes. All right, tell us about this.
Actually, we're developing a retail store with the gas station with the Dunkin' Donuts actually. I mean, I don't know how much idea. I'm not much of a public speaker, so I can't tell you much about it. But all the details are on there. I'm working with an architect. Actually, my architect's working with Anaya. Anya. Sorry. My bad. And they've been, anything's missing. I mean, they've been collaborating with each other, and so everything should be on the map, on the site plan actually, also on the paperwork. So on this one, where it tells you exactly what the details are missing or not. So I don't know if you have any questions for me. I could answer them correctly.
What's your name?
Oh, sorry, my name is Jignesh Patel, or Jay.
Jay.
Yeah, they know, I have a lot of people know me by Jay, so I just say go by Jay.
Thank you.
For y'all's benefit, this is the property that has just been demolished next to the Hardys by the Jitney.
Yeah, it is, yes.
Right,
I'm
designer,
sorry?
right?
I hear you.
Was a joke.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
We have fond memories. The time goes on. All right, Anya has reviewed it. Anya, you want to tell us?
Sure. So I have been going back and forth. I think that the one that you just passed out is like the 5th or 6th revision, and we've been working together for the past couple months. There were some issues with I have it on the overall, on my staff review. They're still missing plans for collecting stormwater, if you want to require topography, grading and drainage plans, and then we still have to get T-Dot access.
Actually, T-Dot access, he got approved by them. We're only gonna have 2 main access to it. The third one, there was a third one there, but we're gonna kind of cover with the landscape actually.
Okay, good.
So
And I
that's-
just need to get that
I-
email sent to me.
I thought he sent it to you, Robert Lane did, but if you didn't get it, he has it on this papers. I could give it to you if you want to look at it.
Okay.
No impact by the bridge
No,
torn down and rebuilt, none of that?
no.
There's also, so based on your site plan requirements, it doesn't hit your landscaping.
Oh, the landscaping.
So, and I have it all listed out, that the 10th Street yard is still required to be shown, and the architect who I've been talking to wants to propose an alternative landscaping plan, but that does, require its own process to do too. I think on his site plan, he just wrote, this is the alternative landscaping plan, but I think he didn't realize that there is a process to go along with it, if he wants to do that.
Well, Ed, you're the stickler. You're the stickler.
Well, I'm gonna stick it to us, all
Okay.
right, because what we're doing is we're taking on a bunch of responsibility by looking at all these things, and we're a planning commission, we're not a building permit. We need to separate what goes to code and what goes to planning, and try to keep this as simple as possible, and address the surface issues that we're responsible for. I don't need to be answering questions about sewer impact and water usage, or fire protection, or transportation. We just need to be able to take a good 10,000 foot overlook at things and see that they fit our master plan, our scope for our community. So I think in these workshops, we're gonna have to narrow down what we look at if we wanna do it right, just in case.
What are we being asked to do tonight?
Either approve or deny the site plan the way that's presented to you right now.
I think we've had too many questions already to do that at this point. I mean, I'm not even sure I understand these access and egress points and this has a drive-through?
Yes, it does.
Questions? So,
Does existing use affect us at all on this? That's that it's been a commercial business before and it's been here, are we really, how do we look at this? Just
It's
Big
the
change.
land use
Big
is
change,
fine.
yeah.
The land use is
It's under
fine.
review.
so that kicks in the landscaping.
Well,
Right.
the current building is being taken down.
It is.
They got a permit for that, so there's not gonna be anything left. It's gonna be a new build.
It's gonna be completely new
Yeah.
build, it's gonna be landscaping, really nice too.
But you're not taking up the concrete, you're not taking up anything.
We are, because, you know, it's gonna be completely, we're gonna have a new chains, new canopy, almost whole new. If you give me a second, I can show you new elevations to it too, sorry.
All the concrete, everything will be taken up.
So it's gonna be graded to the ground, basically to the ground.
So if you're taking it up, then the landscaping requirements could be met, correct?
Yes, but I
Yeah.
still need to see those plans.
Yeah, that's what, but you don't have it.
Yeah, I mean, he's out of the office today, actually he was gonna be here, but actually when he thought the planning commission was on May 2nd, I think, if I recall it right, but, you know, he already had plans for this week, so he couldn't make it today, so that's the only reason he wasn't here, otherwise he could answer more questions than I could.
That's okay, but I just need to have enough time prior to review the site plan and,
Gotcha.
if there's.
So my question is, what kind of a landscaping, what kind of requirements do you require? So
I can show you what's in the zoning ordinance. It is hefty. It's a lot.
Okay. Because I think he said, landscaping, if you look at page 2 on landscaping, it says 10 feet of street yard required to be shown.
Right.
But it says, if you look at the red, anything, he already provided on that one, so.
You'll have to show me those plans, because I didn't see a 10-foot street yard, and also, I need to see the calculations that are showing that's 20% landscaped.
20% landscape?
Right, the whole development.
Gotcha.
And just based on what I've seen, they haven't been able to fit those requirements in. And so if they want to do an alternative landscaping plan, they need to follow section 710 of the zoning ordinance.
So we've got some gaps in.
Yes.
So we can get this done by next month, the landscaping.
I mean, we can't, the thing is, we're building ground and up, so we're not gonna have landscaping done yet.
But I mean,
The plan.
Oh, on the plans, yes, we could get it done,
So
definitely.
let's make a motion to table it.
I'll make a motion that we table this to the next meeting and so you have time to prepare.
So we need 20% on landscaping.
Whatever's needed.
All right, we have a motion to table this until next month. I need a second.
Wait, I also need to add that I think it's in your requirements that you need to make a decision on a site plan within 90 days. So
90 days.
You cannot continue tabling it for over 90 days.
How many days are we
Which
at?
plan
We're
is
at probably 30 since the last time they.
We're 30.
Yeah.
So we've got 60 days. We have 90 days
For
to
what
do
part of the
something.
process is that?
Site plan,
Just site plan.
either site plan approval or denial.
Yeah, we meet in
We meet again in 2 weeks.
Great.
So we-
I'll second.
so two-
Okay, so we've got a motion on the floor to table it till next meeting. I've got a second from Doreen. Any discussion?
Yeah, the only thing, you said there was about 3 items. There was the stormwater drainage, it's not showing.
It's all on,
So all those things will have to be on.
yeah,
when
yeah.
you bring it
And
back.
your architect has all that information. I know he sent back my notes crossed out, but he,
I mean, I look at the emails, but I mean,
Come on, Jay.
I'm not with.
Well, if you
I'm
need it
not-
approved, you better, if she's
So
got
that's
notes
why
on
I'm
there
trying
that
to
he
take notes
reads.
down right now, so I can tell him exactly what he
yeah.
needs.
And you can tell him to contact me again. I can.
Okay, so we need 20% of landscape, stormwater drainage.
It's all on that list. I can give it to you too.
Okay, I'll
So
take
you don't
notes.
have to write it
What
down.
about lighting? Is lighting not considered?
I don't think lighting was part of the, I don't know, I think maybe it was covered. I don't see it in the notes. We need to look at the.
Well, before we table this, I'm gonna ask a question, if you don't mind,
Mhm.
because we've done this with other developers. If you considered putting a sidewalk and lighting in the front of your business because the town's trying to go to that ornament in the corridor, and as the gentleman back here said, as we develop, that's something that you're going to tear up and take up and tear up and take up. Now, across the street, T-Dot will be doing it correctly, but would you consider doing sidewalk and lighting while you're tearing everything up?
We don't have a problem with that.
No.
That's gonna be more business for us, because, you know, if you think about sidewalk, people are gonna drive by us, or walk, cycle by us, and, you know, they could just visit the store, you know.
So if you'll just note that, and we'll talk to you on it whenever you submit the other list, if they'll have that, see that, and the lighting permit.
Because that's an important property right there, so making it look as beautiful as
Oh,
you
we
can.
are gonna make it look beautiful, like I said. If I have internet access, I could show you all, like, front elevations and all that stuff, but I'm limited to detailing wise, because I'm not an architect, to be honest with you. Like her, she has more sense to it than I would.
That's why you pay the architect to make her happy.
Exactly, but the thing is, if he was here, he could have answered all the questions you would know to it. It's just this week, it was his vacation week, and I couldn't make people come here.
Alrighty, all right. All those in favor? Let me repeat it.
One more
Hold on.
statement.
All right.
One more statement. We're asking these citizens to come forward to a planning commission and approve their conceptual approaches to doing business here.
Okay.
But now we're telling them to add the cost of lighting, of landscaping, of drainage, before they even know if they can do the project. And I don't think that's the right way to go about it, just okay?
Well, this is written in your site plan requirements.
Now, I know the state says it's a recommendation that you don't tell us to, do you? You recommend we do that, right?
No, this is a requirement to have.
But all that on a site plan for a planning commission approval?
Yeah, for every developer, every new development.
Remember the barn at the farm?
Where is the sidewalk going to connect to and to?
I have not seen
I mean,
any
it
sidewalk
makes no
plans.
sense.
And
Nobody's gonna walk
based
on
on
the
what I've
sidewalk.
seen on that parcel, there isn't room on what they're proposing to have a sidewalk.
And they're in the sidewalk coming to it or away from it.
Right, so, I mean, there is, we just applied for the multimodal access grant, and we're asking for sidewalks to be put in on both sides of, Main Street, but, I mean.
Got that, AJB?
No, sorry. I got a question for you. Now you guys are saying we need a sidewalk on our side.
No, we're not saying you need it, we're
Oh,
saying would you
no.
consider it if it could be
We
in
would
your
consider it,
design?
I'm not
Okay.
saying that, but if you guys are gonna have a sidewalk, there's gonna be a hard time if you have a sidewalk on my side, I mean, where my property is located. Because if you look at the South Station, it's like really to the edge, if you look at the street sign. So you cannot have a sidewalk over there anyway. So I'm just saying, you know, this is my thinking. I don't have a problem with having a sidewalk. I'm really happy to have a sidewalk, because that's more business for me. I mean, I'm happy to do it, but I'm just saying, you know, this
See
is.
if it would fit in the design.
Exactly.
If it doesn't,
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of space to put a sidewalk over there. That's not a problem. This is the, you know, landscaping, no problem either, because we have a lot of space on there, property. But, you know, lighting and stuff, I don't have any idea except concept of it, so I could talk to him once we get back to Monday, and we could get everything, you know, exactly planned on the site plan for you guys to get approved on the next meeting.
Any other discussion? We've got a motion on the floor and a second to table this until next meeting, which is 2 weeks.
Oh, no, that's fine, no problem.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? Any other opposed? All right, very good. Thank you, Jay.
No problem, thank you.
All righty. Why am I having my workshop now? Next is zoning text amendment, adding apartments as residential land uses in C2. Dean White back again. Come on, Dean. Return engagement.
What are we gonna do now?
We're gonna do the same thing, but we're gonna have some citizen comments about it.
Oh, okay.
You wanna re-explain it for the people who are
They
new?
were here when I said it the first time.
All right, citizens' comments on the proposal to add apartments to C2 district.
What's the reasoning behind that versus just asking the landowner to change the zoning for them to an apartment?
It's spot zoning.
Okay, good answer.
And that's what I was told to do, was to make applications to change the zoning.
Although I don't think, when you say 25% of people in Montego live below property, I don't think selling or renting an apartment for $125,000 is in my budget.
I'm not gonna rent an apartment for $125,000. I mean, I would, I guess, if somebody wanted to.
That's really the rich people.
No, well, if I said that, I.
You mean it would cost that much to develop, I think.
You were talking about income.
Yes, I was talking about two-family income, if you look at median incomes and all that, and just like, single-family dwellings, you know, they're way over $200,000 for what I call, a family, two-person income, say with 2 children. And then I think they want you to have, what, 25% of your income to go towards your, house payment or mortgage or whatever for housing. I mean, they've got all that formulated out, and it's where can you find a house today, affordable house to buy in Montego or find a place to rent?
And you don't know how many apartments you're gonna have?
No. Could be 3.5 acres, and whatever the guidelines will be, the setbacks and the parking spaces and the green area, and you know, I can't go with 2 stories. So, you know, whatever that formula works out, it would fit into your criteria.
All right, comments from Montego citizens about apartments in a C2. C2s are our corridors, so they are going towards Sewanee, they're going to Tracy. That's it for C2, isn't it? It's our corridors in the Montego city limits. So that's where he's talking about.
And this property is located right past, kind of past the peak set on the left, going
Yes.
towards Swan.
Yes.
But again, want to remind you, you're not voting on the property.
Right, I
You're
understand.
voting on every single
Yes.
parcel that is C2 would then be allowed to have apartments.
I just wanted them to know where
Right,
we're talking.
but
It
I mean-
can't be just one, we can't just designate one piece of property.
Well, what we did with one of the ordinances a while back was on a case-by-case basis, they were all reviewed. And I can't remember, I
Permitted on
thought we did
review.
it on this, but it would be reviewed each case by case.
Well, you talked about that, and then,
I thought Earl said we did.
right, but I don't think it's in the minutes, is it, Debbie?
We can always go back to the recording.
Yeah, I don't think it's in the minutes.
So,
It was just discussed,
It was-
and then I was told to go and make a zoning change, and I said that won't
that's what
fly.
zoning.
Comments on apartments in C2.
I have a question for the council. What would be some drawbacks of doing something like that?
According on where the C2 property is, I mean,
Well, the only C2 we have are the corridors, right? I mean, can you think of some negative aspects to allowing him to do that, and what would they be?
if you only allowed apartments, you'd be taking away the opportunity to have revenue from commercial.
So that would mean C2 would only be apartment. You couldn't have other C2s that were still commercial.
No,
It's
You
just
could,
one of
but
the
it would just-
options.
You're right, you don't have very
But
many.
it would be an option for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Sure
if it
seems like
passed.
it's opening up a big can of worms, to let all of C2 have apartment availability. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just seems a little extreme to take the whole kit and caboodle of C2 all the way across the city and open it up for them.
I was wondering how much C2 we actually have.
There's a,
We've got a zoning map.
Yeah.
But how many vacant parcels do you have in situ? And the size of them?
we do have affordable housing issue.
Right, but I was asking, do we know how many, lots, parcels there are in C two?
No, I don't know.
That's vacant?
I don't know.
So we don't know if there's a whole lot of them, or if there's just a few.
Yeah, I
So
don't know.
usually, the market drives that in most places.
Is this what we're
Question?
talking about now?
Yes, Nate.
I would encourage the planning commission to consider rezoning the corridor from there to the next residential unit, who is also having a hard time adding onto his house because he was zoned commercial, zoned the whole thing residential.
Yeah, but you've got businesses in here. You've got some businesses there too.
There's the museum. That's it,
And you've
right?
got the insurance office, and you've got Flip
Oh,
Hops
I
Gate.
forgot about the
So
insurance office.
that's a reason Earl made the recommendation to us. And we let it fall on a case-by-case basis, looking at the property, looking at the uses, and that's the way it could be. That's the, and Earl's not here tonight, but to do it on a case-by-case basis, to where everything's not opened up to it, but if there's a need, there could be the exception without rezoning. And so that was the recommendation Earl made to us about that.
I was thinking that would solve Dean, or Dale Lane's problem as well. And the fellow
Let's
down
don't
the
do
street.
it to help people individually,
No, no.
let's do it because it needs to be done.
Yeah, it's supposed to be for the town.
Ed,
I would argue that's on the corridor.
Question to the board again, am I hearing that if we change this C2, we change all C2? And is that the only way we can do it? Why can we not isolate his property?
Right.
Why?
It's spot zoning.
Spot zoning.
How do you battle spot zoning?
What's wrong with spot zoning?
It's spot zoning is when it's only to the benefit of that property owner and it's a detriment to surrounding property owners.
That's
And
the key.
you look-
If it's a detriment to
Okay.
others, you can't do it.
Sure.
That's spot zoning. But this isn't spot zoning.
It would be
I
up to a
more
court
prone
to determine that.
I'm fine with the apartments, I think we need apartments, but I would be more prone to deal with the spot zoning than I
Yeah.
would change.
Well, that's fine, you know, if that's the will, if you guys think that's the way I need to go, but, I'll be happy to make that
Spot zoning
request.
is not just bad. I mean, some of it's bad, but if it's not to the detriment to those that it surrounds, it's not a bad thing.
I'll come by tomorrow and get an application and
Right.
apply for, zoning change and let that take its course to the hearing and
That was a discussion.
And I guess.
well, I can still go ahead and do that, and you guys turn it down, I mean, it doesn't bother me, you know.
Yeah.
So what's the opposition to having mixed-use residential, or even what you mentioned, you talked about previously, apartments, you know, permitted on review?
Yeah, and that's the way Earl had recommended, their building code enforcement said to do it on review.
But how would you determine one parcel gets apartment versus another one
Well,
doesn't? That would be
There
what
would
you
have
have
to
to
be
do.
stipulations, which he did describe then, but that's been a little bit back since it was in November. Yeah, it was in November is what Janet said, so.
Well, the mixed use would be the commercial on the bottom floor and residential on the top.
So you're not taking away your opportunities to.
And I'm not sure if everybody knows, but Montego is funded on what, Mayor?
Sales tax, occupancy tax, and
Gas
liquor by
tax.
the drink, gas tax, that's it.
Beer tax,
Alcohol,
alcohol,
alcohol.
liquor by the drink.
So that's an alcohol
Uh,
tax.
But the brick and mortar stuff, people are gone. The
Yeah.
shopping centers are going out of business. You look around, the commercial building thing, it is, there's no future in that, you know. And what are the needs?
Well, I'm not disagreeing.
Right, I'm
just
just-
trying to find out
yeah,
a way to do it to
yeah.
where it protects the integrity of the system, it protects the corridor, and it also meets a need. So, and the best way to do it.
Or property tax, I mean, you can reverse the funding
Well,
component.
you probably need to bring that up for for the next election.
Right before.
I mean, it's funding. I mean, the planning commission has to look at the best use for
Well,
funding.
and I'm not opposed to it just staying like it is down there. I've fought that battle before with the state of Tennessee. Harvey Cameron's still here, he can vouch for that. And, you know, I had a little camper trailer down there one time, and it can't look, I mean, it looks terrible. And, you know, so, yeah.
Everybody says it does.
Yeah, I agree.
You're within.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
ordinance, so.
And I can probably make it look a little worse.
I wish you would. Well, actually, not
Okay.
there.
Well, I'm just, saying, you know, we're all talking about it.
All right, I need a,
I'd like to make a motion to
Jane, try to make
deny
a question.
the zoning request from changing, adding apartments to C2.
okay, so repeat that. Repeat that.
I would like to
Wait,
make,
before you do that. If you deny, can he come back?
If we deny it, can we table it?
Let's table it.
Earl will be here next meeting.
And Earl will be here next meeting. Is that what you want to do, or you want to deny it?
And I haven't submitted anything, I just brought it up for you guys to discuss and hash it out. And I have not submitted for a zoning change. I just wrote a letter asking it to be considered.
Give a little guidance.
Yeah, and there needs to be discussion, and you guys need to, you know, bounce it around, and so, I don't think you have to make a motion on anything unless you want to, and it's not gonna approve it or deny it.
Well, we need to kick the can down the road if we're gonna continue the discussion.
Yeah.
So-
But I think you need to, somewhere out there say, you know, a reasonable kicking the can down the road would be 90 days, or, you know, 9 years, or whatever you wanna do.
I'd say 2 weeks.
we're meeting in 2 weeks, so
Yeah, Earl will be
we
here.
want to come back with the,
Yeah.
other requests.
So you're not withdrawing, but you're just.
You just wanna have the discussion.
Yes. And I think it would be premature for you guys to vote to approve to do that tonight. I mean, that would kinda
It would.
look like it's being rushed through, and even though I came up here in probably November.
You have.
That's where.
Yeah.
You're
But I'm okay
persistent.
with it. I've got other things I'm doing right now, and, you know.
I'll rescind my motion and make a new motion to table.
Okay. I need a second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? JD, what was your comment on it? Did you have a comment?
I was gonna say that probably the reason we don't have any more apartments in Monteagle is because of where they're limited to being built now. And the door needs to be open so a person that has land in C2, which is where most of the developers are, can be developed into apartments, because we've gotta have them. We don't have enough housing here. There's no place to rent, and it's a crisis, really. The housing is a crisis in town, so the corridors are really the best place for it. It's not back somewhere in the back of the community. I think it's more up front. So
Could you get, oh, excuse me.
I just think it's a good consideration for C2. It's just another thing that can be done. That doesn't mean every piece of property in C2 is gonna be an apartment. It's just another use that can be considered.
Adding a use.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Could you get around the spot zoning problems by looking at that C2 corridor and maybe like taking every other piece of property, or grouping a few together to change to residential and keeping some commercial, so that the options are still there, but you don't get in trouble with the spot zoning? Is that something something that could be looked at?
I think it's a master plan, land use, that Nate has suggested has to be, done.
Well, if you threw some of the other parcels in down there, which I think is what he's saying.
Yeah.
They would be non-conforming use, the ones, before you get to me and the ones after me, they would be, immediately non-conforming on the use, and I don't think they would want their property done that way.
Well, I wasn't talking about existing structure and businesses and stuff like that. Look at the empty lot parcels that are left and kind of see if there's some even division of residential versus, commercial, and then we don't have to change the C2 across the entire board.
Well, and Dean's property is adjacent to Cliff Tops, which is a primary residential use. It's not in the city limits, but is it in our metropolitan planning unit so that we could say that it's adjacent to residential from a?
I mean, the zoning wouldn't impact that. I don't know, it'd be something I have to look into more.
Because it's adjacent to residential use, it just happens to be residential.
There is
use
property
outside the city
surrounding
limits.
it that is, it is surrounded by C2 completely,
Yeah.
right?
But
It's not right adjoined with Cliff Top, so.
If you zone it all residential, you're restricting it even more.
Yeah.
So then you limit
Yes.
any potential
So
commercial.
is it that difficult to add another part to the definition of C2 that includes apartments instead of changing the zoning, redefine C2 with slight additions?
Yeah, it's not that hard.
That's what Earl had recommended,
Mhm.
and he said on a case-by-case basis, like JD said, if there's a reason for it, and whether it's commercial or not, but that was his recommendation.
But a case by case has to be logically defined,
Yeah.
legally defined.
Well, for years, most everything in the zones had uses permitted, uses prohibited, and uses permitted on review.
Right.
And I think that's probably, where some of you are going.
All right. Thank you, Dean, for continuing this discussion. Oh, we need to vote. All those in favor of tabling this to the next meeting? Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you for being a good neighbor. All right, request to rezone R1 to R4, Tom Kale. Back again.
First of all, I'd like to point out that we have two members of the Hartley family here that I'm working with, plus our attorney.
Oh, awesome.
So,
Bring them up.
yeah, well, they may just want to sit back there. I don't know. You want to come up, Joe?
No, I'm fine.
All right.
I'm all in my daughter Natalie.
Hey, Natalie. Hey, Joe. Good to see you.
First of all, we want to amend our application to requesting to go from R1 to R4, from R1 to R2.
Do they need to fill out another,
I've already had it emailed to me, and I've checked with Chad, and it's fine that.
all right, so we're good to go
I think
there?
we're good on the legal side. We tried to make sure that was what we did. So, the only thing that's really germane to the discussion is that change from R1 to R2. Which basically, the main thing that it does is it reduces the minimum square foot required for a house from 800 to 600 feet. All the other stuff that we discussed previously in terms of water, sewer, traffic, all of those things can be solved, hopefully, in the process that comes after it's rezoned, which is the plating process. Other thing is to point out that it is currently zoned R1. We could do this exact subdivision that you guys have seen legally, subject to plating, the same plating process, but not subject to all of the other extras that we've discussed previously that we tried to address with some of the concerns with adjusting the entrances and things like that. So right now, what we're just humbly asking is that we can get an approval to go from R1 to R2 for this parcel.
So you can build a 200-foot less square foot house?
Correct.
Are there any other differences between R2 and R1?
Some changes, some uses that are allowed in R2 but not allowed in R1 for residential uses are duplexes. Also, when we look at bed and breakfasts are allowed. rooming and boarding houses. And then, those are the things that are allowed versus what's not allowed in R1, and then, planned unit developments aren't allowed in R2.
Why aren't you doing a planned unit development?
Well, actually, it's because of those items that she just listed that we don't want to
Well,
be doing. Because under the PUD guidelines, you have to have one of those. You have to have a boarding house or a rental units and things like that. And that's not our goal. Our goal is to build a residential, single-family home subdivision, not multifamily of any type. I will say the one thing that can happen, that won't happen with this development, if by going to R2, is that the lot sizes can shrink some more. But we don't want that, and we're not going to reduce that.
Ray, I didn't recognize you with that beard.
Okay, thank you. I have a problem with the development. We live right next to it. If it was true residential with single-family homes where people were living there, I would say go for it. But what I'm seeing is the same thing that happened at the other tiny-owned communities, is they become rental units where they're rented every weekday that's possible. People go down to the caverns, they party, they come up here, and they continue partying. And we're in a residential neighborhood. And you're calling it residential, but I'm calling it an apartment building spread out over 50 acres.
Well, I can't determine, you want to put restrictions on what somebody can do with their property.
I'm not saying that. You're calling it residential,
It is
but yet it's
residential.
rentals. It's
It is,
completely
I'm gonna
rental
own one.
business.
I'm gonna own one of these units, and I'm gonna live, and I'm gonna be there every weekend.
Well, I'll move out of mine.
You got it. Weekend.
Yeah, weekend. We live here.
But you still couldn't restrict that in R1.
Okay.
You could still have that if it was an R1 community as well.
Yeah, we could still do the same thing in R1.
Go ahead and do it.
And we've put in,
Go do it.
on purpose, we've put in this 50-foot buffer around the entire property, 50 feet, that will remain wooded. It's all gonna remain wooded anyway, as I said earlier tonight. But it's a 50-foot buffer all the way around. That is more than you ever see most that you see most developers put in terms of a buffer around their property.
Who's gonna keep all those people on that buffer?
Wait, what?
Who's going to keep all of those people on that buffer when they decide to party?
I don't think I'm understanding what you're asking. I mean, it's gonna be a hiking trail. It's a common area, owned by the homeowners association. There'll be a hiking trail. So I don't see where you.
Is that 50 feet gonna be fenced off, so we don't have your people coming into our neighborhoods?
Joe, we wanna fence it? I mean, we can fence it and, if you don't want access to the hiking trails, that's fine.
We don't.
We don't. I think the separation should be.
But once again, I think that's another issue that's not very germane to the issue that's at hand.
Well, we better pay attention to it now.
Yeah, it kind of does. So we try to do a good neighbor policy. We're a small community, so
I understand.
we want to make sure that the neighbors are definitely in the loop of everything, right?
I'm not denying that, but the reason, one of the many reasons that we went from originally a 25-foot buffer to a 50-foot buffer was to insulate from the neighbors, so that they wouldn't see, they're not. I mean, these small homes. We're not going to do what they did over at Water's Edge and clear cut it or grub it the way they did.
Again, my question is, how do you keep those people on that 50-foot buffer? They're going to wander wherever they want to.
I'm confused as to what you're saying. Keep people on a 50-foot buffer.
Are you going to put a boundary to keep these people?
If you would like a fence around between this development and your residential property, then we will put a fence up around the property, not a problem.
You'll have to look at that fence.
I have a question. You said it's a gated community. I know, the Assembly provides its own security, correct? Cliff Tops has its own security, correct? Right, right, Peter?
Yep.
So will this community, because it's gonna be a gated community, will you provide your own security for that? I mean, since it's so many homes.
At this point, we're not planning on hiring a full-time security company, but I'm assuming that the homeowner association, if they saw the need, that there were security issues, that yeah, we
Well, I'm
would
just
we would
saying,
take
the
that
most
step.
habit, you know, I don't know if there's that much crime in the Assembly. I thought I saw Scott, or, at Cliff Tops, I think it's more as a security thing for them.
How many lots are in Cliff Tops?
I don't know how many's in Cliff Tops, but I know, how many
Less
said
than
this?
two.
They're 5-acre lots.
About
In Cliff
200.
Tops,
And how many lots in the Assembly?
161.
But I'm just saying they have their own security, so that's what I was wondering if you're on, because it's a gated community, and they're asking about,
If we found a need for it,
you will do it.
we would do it. But I'm not, I don't wanna commit on the front end for the homeowner association to spend that kind of money. You know,
Well, you have a gated community that all you have control of is the gate.
and
So
for most
what?
of them, that's enough,
Really?
I mean, from my experience.
Well,
What about the-
what about your Monday through Friday when you're not here on the weekend?
Water, sewer, and all that, I mean, how much is this 600 square foot home gonna be able to add to the revenue to this town to support the infrastructure that's gonna need to be put in place to support this kind of growth?
Well,
Are you willing to fund it?
to fund what?
You know, increasing our sewer and water and all that to help support your,
I don't see that would be something that would fall on the developer's side. I mean.
well, and typically, if you look at some of the stuff going on in Nashville and other areas, they are paying for it.
Okay, infrastructure,
You're asking for the same thing here.
and
Referring to impact fees and
I mean,
taxes.
impact fees, I mean, you're gonna have a tremendous impact, and we can't, the town of Montego can't support this.
Well, so does that mean
Well,
what we're
you
trying to
can-
do is an impact, you wanna put an impact fee on all the residential properties in town?
Well, no, what, it
Or
would
just
be the
new
new,
ones?
it would be the
New
new,
residents.
the new.
all right,
Coming in.
to address that, thank you. We've got the town engineer here. Where are we at with water and sewer? I know that's not a part of the planning commission's realm, if you will. That's a city council, but, it's good to know. So thank you for being here.
I will, I guess I'll provide some information. I hope will answer multiple questions that may come up regarding the water and sewer. So, just a little background, on what's been done. So, over the past year, Monteagle has been performing asset management and studies of both water and sewer systems, for related and unrelated reasons, just as part of their standard operations that's required by regulatory agencies. So, field work was just completed not too long ago, which is a big and important part of gathering information and data on both water and sewer side. So as far as capacity goes, it's not just a simple addition and subtraction number that can be answered in a one-sentence paragraph, basically. The town on the sewer side, just to give you some technical background, the town feeds the treatment plant through multiple pump stations. So if at any time developments or industries or commercial customers are tied into force mains or pressurized systems, those affect not only capacity of the force mains, it may affect set points and the associated run times of the pump station. So all those things matter depending on if it hooks into gravity or if it hooks into pressurized systems. And so we have to evaluate where and how each unit goes into the sewer system because everything is pumped to the wastewater treatment plant. Unlike a lot of systems in the state, they gravity flow. that's a little simpler than when they are pressure flowed or sent to the treatment plant via pump station. So pump stations have to be evaluated, force main capacity has to be evaluated. There's also a total capacity at the treatment plant. So so where we're at right now is we are in the process of evaluating capacity within the system as a whole. So last year we conducted a flow monitoring study, which was discussed previously at different meetings for I&I. And like one gentleman stated, there's I&I in the system of, there's I&I in every system in the state of Tennessee. And so there are plans to address that. These type projects move very slow. It's not something that can be fixed overnight. They cost a lot of money, and as one of the members pointed out, that this is an enterprise fund, and so it has to pay for itself. You can't take property tax or bake sale money to fix sewer problems. That has to come from sewer rates. And so these large capital repair projects take time to evaluate, to make sure you're repairing the correct problems that may be resulting in capacity issues. And so, as many of you may be aware, there's a lot of federal funds that are coming out through the ARP funding. So Monteagle has and is in the process of applying and utilizing those funds that are made available over the coming next year or two to make repairs in the water and sewer systems. And so this is a process, and I understand that there's development that I see the climate of development all over the state. I understand there's a need, but also understand that the town has been taking steps over the past year and a half to get to where they are at this point. Unfortunately, I don't have a clear-cut answer of how much can I add on. At some point, the bucket's full, and until we produce a model and a full capacity assessment, then at that point we can provide more detailed answers and explanations about if we hook in here, then this is what happens. This pump station needs to be upgraded, this force main needs to be upgraded, or if we hook in here, there's no issues. And so how it hooks in, where it hooks in, how much it hooks in, all that is relevant to the inner workings network of the system. So to answer your question, I don't have an answer right now. When will I have it? As quickly as possible. We're currently working on that. It's a process. It's not something that we can just push a button. If it was that easy, everybody would do it. So.
What's our water situation?
Same response. It's a different system, but you have your own water treatment facility. You have your own water source. You also purchase water from neighboring utilities, and so again, having collected the field data to understand where the lines are, what size they are, what the capacities of those lines. We've just finished performing a flow hydrant test of all the hydrants in the system to evaluate pressure. And so we're just getting a lot of this information in. And so, everybody thinks that because there's a water line in front of your property that you can tie on, X number of taps. Well, that's not necessarily so. It may work for the first X number of homes, but then the next one is going to cause everybody a problem because there's no pressure. And so we have to look at pressure and volume and what size lines, and some will require fire flow and some may not. And so again, it's not a simple one sentence answer of a yes or a no. And there's a lot that goes into that evaluation, because once it's approved, somebody says yes, well then it's a yes. And so you're obligated. And so in order to really define what capacity is there, what's the availability of service, there's a process that really for the town to do their due diligence in evaluating the assessment of these services that are provided. those that are being provided currently and those that may be provided to future developments. So I understand the predicament that everyone is that wants to develop. So I see it all over. I understand that. I understand time is money and everybody wants the answer now. Unfortunately, I don't have those answers. So, you know, I'm not going to tell the town that, yep, there's a checklist and it's not as simple as check a box that we had it. You know, there's some calculations and evaluations that need to be performed before we get to that point.
So your recommendation, what are you giving the town for a recommendation? Once again, I know that's not in our realm, but what's the town gonna do?
Well, and I'm gonna speak for the town now. And Grant, do you wanna say something before?
Well, it sounds like you kind of have your answer in terms of right now making the decision to go from R1 to R2. I mean, you can't, for a development of this size or anything that's very large like this, changing a zoning, letting somebody to get started through their process, and all of a sudden find out, oh my gosh, this is going to affect the rest of the body of money, go to the redirect capacity, we don't have water, they're not going to be able to provide fire, or whatever the case may be. It sounds like we kind of have our answer a little bit here, at least something to majorly consider about changing from R1 to R2. I'd like to go back real quickly, if I could. The difference between R1 and R2, Mr. Kale said that even if they're humbly asking, and even if it comes to even if it stays at R1, they're going to do this development anyway.
We can. I mean, that is a point, that we can, by the current zoning, do this exact development with 800 square foot houses or more.
Is that really true with the zoning thing? They could do 800 square foot houses all through this thing, no matter how many? So the only reason you want to go to R2 is so that you can get down to 600, is that correct, right?
Which uses less sewer and less water.
I thought R1 was certain acreage and single family, and I thought there was more restrictions than just 800 square feet.
You have to be on a 10,000 square foot lot, and the minimum square footage for a house is 800, and so then it drops down to 7,500 square feet for R2 and 600 square feet house.
So when, down the process, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, the site plan has to be signed off on water, sewer, etc. So.
Well, and I mentioned this earlier, there's a lot of steps that these developers could take in terms of clearing, road grading, and some other things that would, that then they come up to the committee and all the things. They're like, well, we're so far down the road, you've got to give it to us because we've already invested this much money. We saw this.
You can't grade a road until you have a plan. And that, you can't do anything until you've got an approved final plat, as I understand y'all's regulations.
Yeah, we have to be permitted to do that.
And we're gonna hire Reagan Smith engineers, Nashville and Chattanooga, to do all of our engineering work, and they will be working from day one. In fact, I've already sent some of that stuff back and forth. If you haven't heard from them yet, you will. So our engineers will be working with the city engineer to help figure out these questions about capacity and the design of the system, because it's kind of a unique piece of property in that we've got both gravity fed and force main on the property already. And we don't know what that's going to look like. They don't know what that's going to look like. But the engineers that we want to hire to do this, if we can get the zoning side of this solved, engineers are going to be, that's when we're going to go spend whatever it is, $150,000. I mean, it's a lot of money on this engineering work to get to a preliminary plat that meets the specs of what Monteagle wants in that plat, which I don't know the last time you read it, in the subdivision regulations, but it's a very detailed list that has to be in that plat, and then you guys have to approve the preliminary one, and then we got to go back and if we have to make any changes or anything else, then you guys have to approve the final one. So you got 2 more votes, as I read it, before this subdivision can even turn a spec.
rezoning deals with a separate process, though. That's a public hearing and then city council. So you're adding another layer.
But just to speak to, Travis is here tonight, we also have a utility director, we have a roads department director, and the reason they're here, for the last year and a half, we have been working on this as the council, I'm speaking as the mayor. The corridor plan is not being abandoned, we're also doing that to finalize this, so we've got a lot of moving parts. One of the things that we had to do is see where we were. We've identified finite problems, is that not correct, gentlemen?
Correct.
And those are being addressed with two of our partners. We're also, we received an ARC grant for $500,000. But to have the matching funds, of course, we did the GIS system, which identified all of our water and sewer lines, correct, or 95% of them. So we're in the process, as he said, doing this assessment that had not been done electronically. Nate's also, we just got the roads, we're adding the roads to that. We're trying to get money to a point as we apply for grants, as we look at development, as we do these things, and as we, as Planning Commission and Council, allow for these things to happen, that we grow in a healthy way, and we grow with it, with what we want to look like. Now, as Travis Wilson said, who is the engineer for our farm, and John's there, and also Keith tonight, is that there is growth capacity, but we don't know what that is. You know, and as they said tonight, if we sell your water tap, we have to get on water. Is that not correct, gentlemen? If we sell you a sewer tap, we have to cook. We're not selling any of those things yet. We're trying to find out what is our capacity, and honestly, we're looking at expanding the sewer plant in probably 2 years because of all the growth that's wanting to come in. Does it need to happen now? No. But we're also working on a plan 2035 to where whoever's here after us can grow in a healthy way. So, to answer your questions, also roads. I do know this, I'll speak because Alan Wood, who's the district director of TDOT, contacted me and said there will be traffic studies done by this company or any company coming in. We have nothing to do with that. He said on every access point, is what he had told me in an email. So, and that's what TDOT, because it all feeds into the state highway. So we're all working together carefully, and we're not trying to slow down business, and we're not anti-business by any means, but we're trying to protect our town, because as you said, we can't hook up, 1,000 different houses and not be able to, provide water or to provide sewer. So for a year and a half, we've been trying to put this assessment together. I wish we could do it a lot quicker, but it's going to take a little more time, and then we've also got to pay for it. Impact fees, they've never been in the town of Montego. We're also reviewing those. We're doing a study to do impact fees, and that's for new development. That's never happened before, but Montego's growing, and we've got to be able to pay for it. Police officers, and as the gentleman said, water and sewer funds cannot be mixed with your general funds. Your police department, your roads, your fire department is not paid out of your enterprise funds, which is your water and sewer, and those have to be totally separate. And we got our CFO officer up here, and they can contest to that. So we're trying to get it in order, and we have a gentleman down there that's working on our zoning and ordinance to make sure they're consistent, and our mapping. So we're trying to do that as we move forward slowly and get things done. So it protects everyone.
So what does that mean to the Planning Commission with the items on the agenda?
What does it mean?
Yes.
I think it's clear that we have 200 units that we're proposing to come online here, and we're not exactly sure what we can do with it yet. Is that correct?
From a water and sewer standpoint, that is correct.
That's right. Okay. Yes, sir.
Are there any diagrams or plans that are available for the citizens to look at for the proposed development?
They're
Online. It's online. It was posted on the Facebook and website, right?
Yeah.
So we're online. I've
We're
gotten
online.
on y'all's website
Town of
before,
Montego.
and it's a little confusing, I think.
It's Town of Montego, and then if you go under, I think it's minutes, of course, that's another thing we're
under
working.
meetings.
Under meetings, then there's planning commission.
The plat is posted on there for this?
Yes, but I got a revised site plan sent to me last week, and I didn't send I don't think it was updated on the website. So if you want, I can give you my card, you can email me, I can send you the most recent.
So what part of the website is that on?
I don't know that. I think Lynetta is in charge of putting it on the website.
Under meetings,
Jen,
planning
is that
commission.
something that would be okay to post to the group that we've got that's been working, the town hall group? Is that something that we could post through there, since you have a lot of people's addresses? That'd be great, thanks.
Where are the main entrances for this development gonna be?
Two of them, one on Wren's Nest Road and one on 41.
Where's the one in particular on 41?
Right now, the plan is we hope that the state will approve a connection right where the manhole cover is. If you've gone down 41, there's the old gravity line comes and hits 41 before it goes down. Actually, I think it crosses over and then goes down, then it crosses back.
Is that before the VFW on your way down?
Just barely above the VFW on the way down. It's pretty flat right there, and we're hoping that, I think we're far enough out of the curve that the state will approve it. We have to do a traffic study.
That curve is very dangerous
Yeah.
now. But were any of the developers on 41 last Wednesday night? Because I was, along with 3,000 of my newest friends. And the interstate was blocked both ways, and everybody was on 41 going both ways with a new four-way stop, a temporary traffic light, and bumper to bumper from the center of Mont Eagle all the way to Pelham, back to the interstate, and halfway to Altamont, with one snapping it.
And I've been in that traffic too before. I've dealt with it. I understand what you're saying. When wrecks happen and
Nobody would be able to get in and out of
everybody
the
that knows the back road to get up the mountain goes and finds one of them.
I think your concern would be addressed by the traffic study by the state. That's gonna be done first. And I think it'll be their determination if you have two entrances and exits or one, and if that one needs to be upgraded significantly to handle traffic flow. So I think we can wait to hear from the state before we address that.
Yeah, that, to me, that's one of those other things that comes in that preliminary plat submission that we can't submit. I mean, we can't submit to you a preliminary plat that he hadn't signed off on, that he hadn't signed off, and everybody associated has signed off on.
But that is an issue, you're right.
But normal traffic's it's a little over 800 cars a day on 41, according to the state.
But the curve
traffic.
across from Paparon that they pour out on is a nightmare, and we've got to address where that traffic goes. There are future developments behind Sonic we think are coming. That's going to the count, so we've got to come up with the right traffic plan for that.
That's another state issue.
The state is actually assessing that now because of our development. They requested, Nate, when did we go to that meeting?
That was last month, but we'll have to address that intersection in this multimodal.
Well, I know in the multimodal areas, but we'll work with the state. The state's actually doing another traffic count for us as we speak. They've expedited that in the entire area for the growth that we're expecting. But if you mentioned Wren's Nest, now, you're not planning on utilizing Wren's Nest as is actually a road, correct? Because Wren's Nest is a very narrow.
Yeah.
It's 20 feet wide, measured each day. So, I think it's actually 2 feet short of y'all's road standards. I think it's 26 feet.
You are.
But didn't you say?
Where on Wren's Nest?
Where?
Where?
At this point, we have moved it to right just as Wren's Nest starts to widen out for the beginning of the turn lane, where it's wider already.
So you're talking directly behind McDonald's?
Kind of pretty much behind.
Do you have any idea how hard that is to get in and out of there? You've got people who are from out of town who sit in that right-hand lane. I'm in the left lane wanting to turn left, and they turn left and pull in front of me.
It is a bit of
It
a
is
disaster.
horrible. It's disastrous.
But that could be fixed. I'm not arguing with my lovely neighbor here who I love, but he's absolutely right. But that would need to be, that would have to be something big that TDOT does.
Yeah.
Because that will be a disaster, adding whatever's potentially going to the side or behind Sonic, and then the other thing.
Yeah.
Were you planning on using that Wren's Nest as a main road or just a back entrance?
No, it's two gates.
Two gates.
Two separate gates. But practical standpoint. If you have a way, if you know the intersection at Wren's Nest is not easy to deal with, and you have an alternate way to go to a road that goes to a traffic light so you don't have trouble turning left?
By driving through your development?
Well, no. What my point is our development, most of the people are gonna go that way because logic says, I'm gonna go to the path of least resistance.
Yeah, we're betting a whole lot on
No.
logic, so.
No, because you're gonna head to the interstate.
You only have to worry about it on weekends.
That's
when they're gonna rent them all out.
All right, any questions? If I'm hearing this correctly, this is going to have to be tabled?
We've actually got to address this at the council meeting as far as the study, correct? We're planning on it. So, I know that's something that's on the agenda.
Why does it have to be tabled? They've got a motion to go, they got a request to go from R1 to R2.
Right.
Has nothing to do with traffic counts or.
It's just a zoning request.
Okay.
I make a motion to deny the request to go from R1 to R2 on the Hardin, reference Hardin Dock.
I second it.
Okay, Duran's a second. The motion is to reject or to deny the R1 to R2 zoning for the Wren's Nest property. Any discussion?
You know, I know that the difference between R1 and R2 is 200 square feet. And I think my problem is 102 homes back there. Again, it's the water, it's the sewer, the amount of homes that you've got back there. And I really hate to be the person who invests all this money in a piece of property and they want to do something with it. And I hate to be like the one who says, no, you can't do it, you know? But personally, and I'd like to think that on behalf of the citizens of Montego that I represent, I'm not for it. I think it's way too much for where it's at.
And improperly placed.
Well, yeah, for where it's at, I think it's a lot of homes, a lot of stress, neighborhood stress, road stress, whatever. I think it's too much.
Are you talking about the size of the side?
I'm talking about the size of the development in general.
And see, Wren's Nest, my concern is there is a neighborhood back there and they have no other way out. So one way, or go off the bluff, let's just face it, I don't think they were telling them. So, that is a lot of traffic already, and they have, I mean, honestly, if there was another access point, and I know, but just to use Wren's Nest, it's already taxed right now, it's taxed with development that's coming in. You know, there's a hotel coming by Sonic, you know, I know that y'all are aware of that, so the access to Wren's Nest is already congested. And I know that there's also future development, maybe $1 million a year, other places, we don't know where it could be developed later, so that's residential property, everybody knows it. You know, it will develop at one time, I'm not saying today, but the point being, that's a lot of stress on Wren's Nest Road with already what's going on there, and there's no real plan for it, but oh, we're just going to come out there. I'd rather see you come out on 41, honestly, to work with the state, have access, if you had access to your development on 41 somehow. You know, you can come up with an alternative plan. I don't know.
May I hear the motion that was on, that's
All
on
right,
the table?
the motion on the floor is to deny the R1 to R2 request by the Wren's Nest Development. There's a motion and a second. We're in discussion phase. Am I hearing just call the question? Or do you want to still have discussion?
Call
I
the
just
question.
want to point out that denying it does not change his ability to do his development at this point. In order to do something with that, we would have to entertain raising the minimum lot size for R1. And I, for one, as a city council member, didn't realize that 10,000 square feet was the minimum for R1.
It's the lot size.
Yeah, that seems like a small lot size for R1.
Yeah.
Man,
800 square feet.
So I want to point that out, that that's how we would address this density, is by increasing the minimum lot
But you can't do it now that it's already been addressed on this development. I'm just saying,
Right, I,
future development maybe, but not now.
well, we haven't approved the site plan.
Okay, the discussion is that what we're discussing is the motion to deny R1 to R2. Any discussion on that point? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
No.
I'm going to take a roll call. Ed?
No.
All right. To deny. The motion, Richard had a motion to deny the R1 to R2 rezoning request, and we have a second. And roll call. Ed? Comment?
Yeah, we're discussing the zoning.
Yes.
It's the first in many steps that these people have to go through. It doesn't approve or deny this plan, all right? It just moves it forward one little bitty step. We still wait on the state. We still wait on water and sewer, and more critical issues.
But you got your square footage.
My hopes are that we raise the square footage requirements. People that worry about neighbors, you're gonna have better neighbors with bigger houses. You're gonna cut down traffic flow and house count. So that, as I said, there are lots of little issues we have to address. So I vote no as far as that.
Vote no as far as.
Denying it.
Amendment.
Yeah.
You want to deny it, I vote no.
All right. Peter?
No.
All right, Richard? Janet?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Durain?
Yes.
Miss Chairwoman Russell.
What?
We're waiting. She's a tiebreaker.
Oh, I'm a personal property, property rights, no. And it carries, so we have 4-3. The yeses have it. Our next step for this then is what? R1 it is.
Actually, I think we can take it in front of the town council, as I understand it, but you can overrule the planning commission.
Yes, you can.
I don't know if that's gonna be, we have to circle around and discuss what we want to do.
Well, I think you're missing a big point of what they're saying, is that you can circumvent it any way you want, but if there's not the water and sewer to support it, and there are highways and roads, that's not gonna happen, period.
You voted on this.
You don't have anything to do with that.
We voted on zoning.
No.
All right, moving on to the next request. Request to rezone 355 Wendell Street, I-1 to R4, John Adams.
There was some questions earlier.
If you guys are chit-chatting, just go on outside and we're going to hear from John Adams.
There was a question from one of the homeowners in the area about how this planned resort community is going to work. It's not going to be a trailer park. It is a resort community. That means people bring in real nice, expensive RVs. They park, they enjoy the evening, and go home to the next spot, or they get to stay there 2 or 3 days. All these units are rented. They bring revenue to this city that needs revenue, a lot of revenue. Now, you can tell me, we don't want 140 sites. You can tell me maybe 100, maybe 80. I can make it work. I'd rather have the 140, but there's a lot of steps we have to go through. So all we're asking today is, we want to put an R4, a tiny planned community that will bring lots of revenue to the city. and this won't be our first venture here. As I mentioned, affordable housing is on our mind. And what that means is, I live in 3 rooms in a house that's 4,000 square foot. And I can assure you that the richest man in the United States can live in a 400 square foot home. There's a lot of people that can live in it. And they're affordable. They will resolve your employment problem. So this is one development that we bring up here. We bring revenue to the city, that then we can take those revenues and reinvest it into the community. So at some point, apartments that are 1,000 square feet, you don't have to live in 1,000 square feet to live. You can live in 400 and 500 square feet, and you can make that housing affordable, beautiful, and eco-friendly. It can be done. It's being done. It's going to have to be done, because we cannot keep going the way we're going in this nation. We're the only nation in the world that air conditions 4,000 square foot house. I sell mini splits that you can go in, put 3 of them in a house, and cut your electric bill by half. You don't have to heat and air the whole house. So these are the kind of things that we're going to bring to the table. And I think that if you can find a way to find an R4 zoning up here, this is going to be a great start. It doesn't have to be 50 of these developments up here. There can be one, as far as I'm concerned, it can be mine. So you need to start somewhere, because when you go look at Gatlinburg and you go look at Sevierville, it's a disaster. It's a disaster in Nashville. No planning.
Yep.
It's a disaster. You can be an example for everyone in this nation. I talked to a developer in Gulf Shores. Please come down here, John. We need affordable housing. So, but like every developer, you got to have a golden goose to lay the golden egg to help do these other things. So I know that when I develop low-income housing, and don't get me wrong about affordable housing and low-income housing, there's a big difference. I'm talking about affordable housing. So there is grants. There is a lot of grant money that is available to this city if they go look for it. So I think our development makes a lot of sense, and we would love to get the support of the community, and we'd love to get the support of this planning department and city council. It's a good start, but it's got to start somewhere.
Thank you. JD, you have a comment on that?
I'd like to see it go to R4. I'm very limited with I-1, what can be done there, and all those uses are going to be very aggressive to the community, and I just don't think that's a good idea for that spot in town. So I'm kind of like Dean. I don't know why we need an industrial zone.
I think it's like legally required.
Yeah. But maybe we can put it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Originally, this property was zoned residential.
What did Lee Parker have that he was bragging on that he could put a strip club in? Remember that way
It's
back
industrial,
when?
yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was all proud of that. He was
Yeah.
chief of police back in the day, by the way.
Strip clubs, junkyards, and,
Yeah.
you know.
So that's what that
plants.
property is,
Yeah.
that one piece of property.
But you know, I have got a permit on that property, an environmental permit, that I've had for several years. And I do have people interested in it. But
Oh, I'm sure.
I would rather go the residential direction.
Why does it have to be R4? Why is this okay to be R4, but the one we just discussed was not okay to be R2?
R4s take RVs.
Why do we want RVs?
It's part of this development as an RV park.
I
it's a resort development catering to RVs. I mean, why would you have a commercial piece of property and not build a motel on it? I mean, it's the same thing, it's another amenity for travelers, so. And it's only allowed in a couple of zones.
And the closest RV park or campsite is 9 miles away. So you're missing that revenue. This is, you know, cities survive on revenue. The next step, when this commercial development comes in here, the next step is going to be property tax. You don't have those revenues.
So what kind of revenue are we talking about from this development? I'm confused on how much revenue that actually provides
It's,
the
I think
city.
it's a total of, JD, you could probably answer that better. It's about,
Well, if you're gonna rent all the units,
yeah.
it'll be about $350,000 a year.
Hotel motel applies to RVs as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Ed,
If I'm 80 years old and blind, crippled, and crazy, and I pull my 40-foot RV into Mont Eagle off the interstate, how am I gonna get to your development?
Right off the interstate.
How right off to the interstate?
Well, it's on wells. There's one,
So you're gonna put your entrance on the other side of the interstate?
Where it is now.
The property goes from Wells Street over to Laurel Lake, basically.
So that traffic will not come into the central business district?
no, we're gonna cut off the Laurel Lake area just for emergency vehicles. There'll be a turnabout right there.
Is that exit 135 or 134?
35.
So why does it have to be R4? Why can't it be R2 or R3 who allows RVs?
Well, the main thing is that we don't wanna build that big of a home. We wanna build 400, 500.
But
It's less impact.
But you're saying bill, is this a stick bill, is this is they brought in,
Well-
wheel? Because see, I'll just say, I have a problem with tiny homes in the concept, they're off the grid in Mont Eagle. You can do a 600 square foot house in the other zones, which is a small house.
Yeah.
So,
Well-
and
Right now, tiny homes are only in R4 too.
that's what I'm saying, so, and we were discussing tiny homes, the size, the description, and how they were being done. And Earl said they have to be manufactured a certain way, but what they can become. So many RV parks, you know, swimming pools, tree houses, if they're 600 feet, you know, but, and stick bills, but, you know, a resort. But tiny homes being brought in that concept.
Well, I want to encourage you, I'm not saying that we're not going to stick to it, but I will encourage everybody, if you want to see something that's really amazing, go to Boxable. It's B-O-X-A-B-L-E, or A-B-L. This company's developed some of the finest, futuristic, fold-out homes you've ever seen in your life. I'm not saying that's where we're going to go, but if the city council or the city says they gotta be stick built, we'll stick built. But if I can find, and even if we did bring them in on a trailer, all that would be removed, it'd be on a permanent foundation. So it wouldn't make any difference. Yeah, so, you know, I was involved 25 years ago with Cardinal Industries. Cardinal Industries was in a little town called Union City, Georgia. Leading company throughout the nation of modular housing and how it was all put together, led up to where we're at today. And it was so ahead of its time, it failed. But you still see a lot of these nice inns around. That was all Cardinal Industries. So modular building is not bad. In fact, you have more controlled quality than you do, you know, when you're on site building. But I think in this particular case, unless the city says, don't want anything that is brought in and then put on the foundation, we want them all stick built, we'll stick built. But I'd like to get 20 up pretty quick. And there's like 5 manufacturers we've talked to across the country. Yes, they'll come in on wheels. The wheels will be removed. They'll be backed into a foundation. And that foundation will lift that
we'll be able to lift that structure up onto that foundation. It'll be a permanent foundation.
But I remember Earl had told us there has to be a certain, with the building codes, there has to be a certain size to it. And then also, even if it's a modular home, it has to have a certain permit. He discussed that.
Yes, and we have to, you would have to recommend town council to adopt Appendix Q, so that we.
Adopt what?
Appendix Q,
That's
which
right.
is like for tiny homes, 400 square feet or less. We don't have anything right now in our building code.
But I will say to the planning commission, I'm not opposed to stick buildings. It just takes long to get. And we like to get this development up as quick as we can. And getting 20 units up and the RV in there and the community center is going to generate immediate money. Not only for us, but for you guys too. But if you feel more comfortable with stick building, I'll stick build every one of them. I own a building supply company, so that's not going to be a problem.
I don't think the issue is, I mean, it has to be permanently installed based on what tiny home regulations already exist.
Right.
But the town hasn't taken the steps yet to adopt building code, regardless of whether it's code in or stick built. They just would have to do that first.
Well,
which
whether
has already been discussed previously.
whether we're that first experience for the city, we'd like to be that first experience because I think it'll set a tone down the road. I don't think you're going to have a whole lot of developers come up here and build, 9 zillion tiny home communities. But now here's another thing. I've been through the recession, and I at 2008, and I was building $3.5 million houses and $700,000 houses. And one thing's great about this kind of community, if it turns out that we have a turn down in our economy, we could let these units be rented with a rezoning on a more permanent basis. But my goal is to make this strictly rental units on vacation resorts.
Go ahead, Darrell.
I got 2 questions. Marion County owns Wells Road.
I'm sorry?
Marion County owns Wells Road.
Okay.
Are you gonna improve it?
We have to. What improvements do you think it needs?
I own an RV, okay? It's pretty tough to get down Wells Road with that RV. I live on,
Well,
off of Wells
I own
Road.
2 RVs. One's a big old tour bus he used to tour in, and I got a 20 to 32 footer.
That road needs, my point is, that road needs to be improved.
Yeah, okay.
The second is, what are you gonna do with all the wildlife? You
I
know,
hope
they
it's
just
gonna
clear
stay
cut about
there.
40 acres right there and run off most of the deer.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do with the rest of them?
Well, I hope they'll stay. If we make it, if we
No.
make it nice enough,
No.
maybe the vegetation will
No.
attract. But, that's a loaded question. Every developer, anywhere in the world, when you start developing, wildlife is gonna be affected.
Sure.
But, I don't know if you want guys out there shooting deer, 100 feet away from your house, and I don't shoot deer anyway.
What about the archery club?
Well, archery is another thing. They could go out there and we could set archery.
It's already there.
Well, then let's continue it.
Okay.
Why can't we make space for people to enjoy outdoor, I don't think we want to have guns out there, but, we could make a buffer zone where they could still continue to do their archery.
We had to stop the archery club from pointing their targets towards our homes.
I don't blame you. So, all this has to be planned. You just don't go out there and start shooting arrows in the sky.
Well, you need to think about the wildlife.
Well, I think about wildlife. I was a pre-vet student at Murray State University, so I've been involved with animals all my life. So we're not going to run off any more animals than we have to, and they're invited anytime they want to come.
Any other neighbor comments? Any other comments about this?
Yeah, just a quick question. Y'all may have answered it, and if so, I apologize. Can he do RVs in R3, or does it need to be R4 for the RV part?
can do it in R3.
You can do it in R3.
He could do it in R3.
Yeah, according to this, right, recreational vehicles.
It refers to mobile homes, it doesn't refer to RVs.
It says recreational.
It's recreational vehicles.
Should be something for campgrounds, I just can't remember. I've
Did,
seen it, and the use is
that-
permitted.
Remember, I think when I first came on board, it was supposed to go before town council that R3 was gonna adopt all the other uses.
Right.
Did that ever go through town council?
Right. I remember we've got it recorded, we can go back and look at it.
Do you remember, JB?
It did go through, I'm pretty sure.
It did, all the way.
Yeah, but we can actually confirm that. But there's two things here, I guess, that I say. You wouldn't do 600 square feet houses if you were doing a resort or amenities because you've got your RVs, you've got your other stuff out there. But
Well, people that know tiny homes aren't 600 square feet.
well, we know that. That's what I'm saying. That's the reason I
That's
said.
the whole
Small,
thing.
well,
Small.
my husband, it would be tiny.
I mean, and plus then you get back into the same thing I said earlier. Every time you add 100 square feet, your price goes up. You're making your trusses, your floor joists, everything goes up. And I can assure you with the prices of lumber right now, and they're not coming down, we would raise the cost of what we plan on building by probably $100,000 or more if we even went 200 square feet. That's why I said earlier, planning planning a 600 square foot home, and you've got the development cost, there's still way you would do that under $200,000.
So the impacts would be to you, but you're not selling them, so
Right.
you're just gonna have to charge more rent to whoever comes in here.
Well,
To
and
spend
we
money
will
in this town.
probably sell 20 of them to the public, but they'll go under our management. They can't live there.
And I like to speak to that just for our management too, because we have quite a bit of experience with Airbnb management. We work with Airbnb management in Nashville. I think a benefit of us coming from larger metropolitan areas and seeing the mistakes that Nashville has done, the mistakes that Gatlinburg has done. Number one, when JD approached us about an opportunity to buy this property, what we liked so much about it is it was all encompassing in a way to it. Because I think several citizens spoke earlier about the bleed out of party people coming out. What we want as a community, we don't want to attract party people, number one. We want to attract couples and families, retirees to come and enjoy and have a quiet weekend in the mountains in your all's community. The community, the property that sits right now has a pond in the community, and there's a lot of other amenities. We would like to have a more inclusive experience in the community. We also, this is something that's been really reinforced by a lot of homeowners in Nashville because, as many of you all know, a lot of these Airbnb properties run along the same zoning and similar streets as normal residences. There's a lot of technology now with decibel levels and control that we do. If someone were to come in, let's just say by happenstance, and they have too much to drink and their noise decibel level of their unit gets over a certain deal, they're done, they're out. That's a non-issue. So what we want is, again, we want this to be a win-win for the community, but we also want to have a development where people can come and it's private and they can enjoy it and enjoy the surroundings, but be sensitive to the neighbors in the community and not have all this spill off. We don't want this to become Nashville or Gatlinburg or Panama City Beach. That is not
How
our.
are you going to control that with an RV that comes off the interstate?
We would have employees in the community, and that's one thing we're still discussing right now, how many full-time we would have as far as security, quality control. Because a community like this, one of the things I think that makes it unique, and one of the things that we discussed with this venture is we are more or less a second mover in your marketplace. The retreat communities have come in, and I like some of the things they've done, but I don't like a lot of the things they've done. I don't think there's enough privacy there. I don't think there's really enough to really offer to the consumer coming in. And I don't think, as you mentioned, if somebody comes in and starts a ruckus, where's their quality control coming in? But even if I'm a renter there, right? I'm not a neighbor. I'm someone renting there with my wife, wanting to have a quiet evening, and somebody's causing a ruckus next door. So we are in discussions about that.
So the city might want to look at adopting a noise.
Yeah.
They have a
They
noise
have
ordinance.
one. Okay.
That has, as you said, has to be measured, and certainly has to be measured to legally do it.
Well, the nice part about nowadays, they have technology to measure that individually, and we can know, because of even the density of these units, if they're a quarter acre, we know who the problem is.
There's a real thorough screening process too, through, you know, the management we do, and some of the other services like Airbnb. So, you know, the biggest culprit to these people that come in and make a mess for everybody else is they leave a trail. And once you start seeing that trail where they've rented and there's a problem and that gets posted, they're blackballed pretty quickly. They may do it one time, they may get away with it twice, but they won't get away with it 3 times. Because they'll get shut down.
So, Mr. Adams, would you be having your own full-time staff there then?
We would,
So they'd live there full-time, 24/7?
yes.
And how many people would you imagine would have to staff it?
Well, we'd like to see a couple first, you know, that would be a property manager, and then probably one other. I'd say probably maybe one individual that's more like a maintenance type guy, and then a couple, maybe.
But as we grow, that may get larger, and obviously we have cleaning people. Like, one of our things for the facility we wanted to offer is a community center. This community center would have, you know, a snack bar, and people check in, they can get sodas and drinks, you know, similar if you stayed in a motel and they had some, you know, vending machine, ping pong tables for kids, and nothing too elaborate, but just something indoors that, you know, next to the pool that, you know, families could enjoy. And then that would be conjoined with our laundry facilities for unit flipping on. So those, the cleaning people would be, you know, in and out of the community and have access to get in.
So would you have security also?
We would be looking at hiring a security person, yes, to be on. And it might be somebody that is in a dual role of security and a manager. Again, as we grow these units and we see, as we expand, we need more personnel. Obviously, as the profits go up, we can hire more people.
And it's a gate too. I mean, they have to come through a gate.
Yeah, it wouldn't be open. They'd have to come through a gate, so. And we're obviously sensitive too, because this property now has 2 entrances, the Aurora Lake coming up Trickery Lane, but there's a lot of houses that you pass to go into this community, and that's something we're thinking about a lot. If the access on the north end of the property makes sense, because you come off right off the interstate for RV traffic, again, with some type of road improvement there, because to your point, you have, how big is your RV? In feet?
36 foot.
That's a pretty big RV. So, I mean, you know, that's one thing that we've discussed, you know, traffic studies and road studies, that would have to be widened. But one thing that we have talked about, Michael, our engineer, my father John, we have talked about the back end of the community, just closing that off and making it for emergency use only. Just having, you know, pedestrian traffic, they had to go that big. So that would be something we talked about.
I have something to add. I think it's important that everybody understands, if you study these types of communities, particularly we've been looking at Colorado, places nowhere near, but that are hugely successful. We have an RV. This is our number 2 RV. We've traveled across the country now twice. We visited many different communities. We felt it. And what's so common now, especially since COVID, families travel together. They travel together. And oftentimes, whether they're overnighters, there's a lot of overnighters. Yes, overnight is huge. You cannot deny that. You know, you're traveling, and where are you going to stay? You know, Flying Pig or Walmart, or can you get a place right off the freeway, or what are you going to do? Yeah, that is something we're keenly aware of. However, on the flip side of that, you've got lots of people, like our architect, like we plan on clustering and theming the tiny homes so that they would complement and amplify what would go along with our RV park, because people travel together. And now what we're finding is, through these studies, again, in different areas, in Vegas and Colorado, families will go in with an RV, some of them will stay in the RV, and maybe the kids, adult kids, grandkids, they'll go get in the tiny homes, or they'll cluster together. So we are keenly aware of that and wanting to really go in that, more of that direction with what we want to do. It's not just, yes, it is 2 separate things. It is an RV park, and it would be a tiny home community with some glamping, a small quantity of glamping. But they would all be together as well. One would complement the other. It wouldn't just be like 2 separate things that have nothing to do with one another. They would be together and they would be separate. Because our studies have shown us that that is very, very popular. The clustering of the tiny homes so that people can come in and they can have wedding, you know, groups. They can have different things. They can have family reunions. And you have so many people, because of the 24 quarter, that was the main reason we were looking at Sevier County, and Sevier County just became cost prohibitive. It's almost a parallel to Nashville, and we live in Nashville, so, and we're in Davidson County, so that's Nashville proper. And if you look at what's happened in Sevierville, like John was saying, but they have some tiny home communities, just like what we're describing, very similar in some ways, but different in others. So what we wanted to do was take this community and blend it with a lot of things that we found to be hugely successful, and learn from some of the things that did work and what didn't work. But one of the biggest things that attracted us was the ability to grow in a community. We own a brokerage company, so we see the potential. You know, we're from a city that grew and grew and grew. We see the potential here in Mount Eagle, and you're in really a great position as a community and everything else. We see how well you've done, and it's like just having that future vision of your corridors and how it could all look and how well it could be received and how nice it could be done, how nice it could be developed. You know, we like nice things. You know, we don't like anything but nice things. So our goal is for it to be super nice. You know, one that is remembered and themed and something that to be proud of. That's our goal, to be proud of. And we wanted to partner with a community that had the same vision that we have. Yes, the location is great. Yes, we know JD, and we've known JD for years, for different reasons, right? It just happened to sort of fall and this came about. So that's where we are. But I think it's important to understand that the RV park, it seems like a little bit in our conversations, it's been sort of a separation factor. It's maybe, oh, you have an RV park, and then you have a tiny home, and you have glamping. Yes, we do, but it's all together as well.
Kevin, you're a neighbor, aren't you? What do you think about this?
Well, I think first of all, if you have access to Laurel Lake Drive, if somebody walks down the hill, they fix to get kicked. Because you can't see on that road, there's no street lights on that road unless you provide them as a homeowner, as I did. You know, how much of a buffer is gonna be between, and listen, let me say this. I'm not to tell anybody what they can do with the property, but I got property. And how much of a buffer is gonna be to the Laurel Lake side? Again, are people gonna be able to just walk down the hill and mix with everybody? When the school is having their university, there's a lot of people on that road, y'all, on Laurel Lake Drive, a lot of people. And what it creates for the homeowners is the homeowners was looking for a sleepy little town, everything being quiet, everything being cool, and it don't sound like it's going to be that way. And it also sounds like people have the, you know, potential of getting hurt coming off the hill.
Thank you.
Well, let me say this. You didn't see the proposed, but we got 100-foot buffer around the whole property. 100 foot, not 50, 100. And so, I don't want to put up a fence, but I'll put up vegetation. I'll put up trees. I'll put a buffer, but it won't be some ugly fence. 6 foot, you know, pressure treated, contaminate the environment fence. No, that's not my thing. It'll be beautiful trees and shrubbery and mounds and things that'll hopefully encourage some of it. We'll figure out how to get some stuff to get the deer to come eat off of it too. We'll put some berries out there. We'll find a way to get them there. But it's planned out. We have a great architect. We have a great engineer. This is not their first rodeo. They're going to come in and with the guidance of the city and the planning, it's going to be a really great looking property. And if the city says, hey, we want to cut it down a little bit, we'll cut it down.
Or if the access, like I said, we just nix Laurel Lane altogether. Just take it off the board. And it's just wells. That's the only entrance in and out.
And if we have to go in there and help the city do some lights and pour a sidewalk, if y'all want it down to the lake, we'll pour a sidewalk.
Laurel Lake can't handle any traffic, and there is
You won't
not
have any.
pedestrian friendly enough to encourage more people to walk around
Right,
it.
yeah,
It's long.
right, but you won't be getting any traffic from our development The only traffic you'll ever get is a fire truck if we have to get one in there. So the entrance is gonna be on wells. In fact, if you look at our plan, Mike and I had this discussion, that was blank. You'll see the turnabout, it's there. So, it's already in the making. There would have to be some kind of emergency entrance, but there's not gonna be through traffic.
In other zoning other than R4?
R2 and R3.
But the R2 only it requires 600 square feet. That's right out of our model. I-
So it's an R4 or nothing?
I'm quite sure I haven't explored the R3, but I need the RVs and I need 400 square foot homes.
R3 is still 600 square feet.
So it's a zoning request, that's all we're talking about.
Yeah.
Opportunity to take another step.
People come in and stay. That is one of the big attractions that are going to bring people here. And this is not permanent housing. The requirements, you know, for like the RV park, you got a 2-week limit that you can stay. You know, so we're not talking about people.
Yeah, we would have heavy HOA requirements, and, you know, the old rule goes, the smaller the house, the shorter the stay. But you can go to Gatlinburg, if you go rent an 8-bedroom house, I have a buddy that owns 4 up there, they stay a long time. We don't want that, you know?
Well, I do know sand plan is not an ideal thing these days. So,
No.
Yeah, we don't need rock quarries or sand plants, do we, JD?
No, ma'am.
But do we need R4 zoning?
Well, tiny homes, let's just, the tiny home is still an issue with it, and it's been discussed a lot with the residents and people we represent. That it should, do we really want it in Montego? And that is still part of Montego. Now, it's not small homes, not a resort, not even RVs, but the tiny homes because of looking at the generations, what they sometimes become. You know, and we have to look, not only today, we're not only looking at today, we're looking at what tomorrow's gonna be.
Sure.
I mean, so we're putting thought process into that. I will say this, though, you did mention you don't know about security, but then you're putting these people right in the center, you know, of neighborhoods. If it's gonna be a resort, we all know, we all go to resorts. We all pay, most of them have security, correct? You
Well,
know,
I didn't say we didn't know about security, I just
Well,
said.
you
that
said
if-
we would see about it, I mean, didn't you?
Security's been decided on. What we're not sure is just the amount of, once the community is finalized and fully built, how many employees we would have as far as a number. But security is a definite yes.
And then also you said you don't want a fence, you don't want to put a gate around it, but if it's a gated community, you know, I mean, it'd be pretty easy to huddle over, you know, around the tree, just like the deer's going to, you know, to protect your neighbors. I mean, I'm just saying.
Except when you put berms up and you put certain vegetation that is not real friendly to people walking
You're
through,
gonna get
getting
cut
a
up
big
pretty
old
bad.
needle in the side of them. But I think that.
I want to keep people out too.
Exactly.
I think we
Yeah,
want to
'cause
try
I'm
to
going to
make
the pool,
the,
man, I
as
don't know.
natural. We want to make it look as natural
I'll
as
hop
it
that
can and complement the land and the topo and the lay of the land. And, now, there may be some area of the front entrance, there might be some kind of old fence that goes out and then it's burned up, and we've got, leaves, and we've got all kinds of different trees that grow quick, and it's hard to go through them and that sort of thing, but to put a 6-foot chain link fence around it,
I don't think that would work for their landscaping either, so, with barbed wire and stuff. But we'll just,
So do we need an R4 zoning? That's the thing.
That's really what it all comes down to. So, commissioners, you're just gonna have to make a motion.
Can I say one thing before you do? If y'all don't
Absolutely.
mind. The ratio of tiny homes, because I know that's a big sticking point in this discussion, could shift as far as how many, the quantity we have versus the tree houses versus the RV slots. We are open to that if financially we can make this work. It's not like we're sitting here saying in stone, we have to have this many units today. Like, we want to work with everybody in here.
I'll tell you one thing that is a big concern to me is paving. That's a $2 million to $3 million investment.
that required in what we're talking about?
I was trying to look that up. I'd have to look into
I
it.
don't think it is. So if we can get around that, I can lower, I can lower.
Well, that's not an issue on this vote anyway.
Yeah.
No. That'll go down the road.
Ed, you gonna make a motion?
I would make a suggestion that if you are going to approve it, that you also make a motion to put it up to town council to adopt appendix Q,
At the same one or a separate one?
a separate motion.
Yeah.
And then I was also gonna ask if you'd be, open to the idea of, doing this process as a PUD, but because you guys fit into all the requirements of a PUD, and it seems like you're willing to work with the town, so it would just require a developer meeting, and then a design, site plan, and.
Architect says yes.
Here, then, that's mute right now. All we're dealing with is
I
industrial
make a
R4,
motion
right?
to deny R4. I don't think we need another R4, we need a R4, so I make a motion to deny.
I second.
Can I say something
Yes.
before the final vote? If you are gonna vote this down, I want a recommendation on what you'd like to see on this industrial property.
I think
And what is capable of doing. Because I think a lot of times the board doesn't consider that an owner has a piece of property sitting in a specific spot. I can't pick it up and move it somewhere else so that it works, or that it doesn't bother anybody. So, I mean, like, you're not gonna go out and recruit a developer to come to town and get him dialed into a certain place. He's gonna buy what's available, he's gonna try to make it work. So, I mean.
Just a sand plant or a rock quarry.
I mean, I've been working for.
Is that we put this in front of the council, for their review, what we're doing, it was saying, we've looked at it, we're comfortable with it, y'all, elected officials make this decision, not the appointed
But you can do the same thing in an R3. You can do the same thing
Everything
in an
but
R2.
So it kills his house size is what it
It's
does.
already,
And we still have the opportunity to define what a 400 square foot home looks like. We're not giving, y'all aren't giving that away by approving an R4. You're just saying, we'd rather have this an R4 than an industrial. And then the council, we get to decide what does a 400 square foot house look like in Mont Eagle.
If we want 400 square feet, we haven't defined that yet. That's what she's saying.
That's right.
But we still have that
know.
opportunity. We're not giving away that
But
opportunity.
that's something we've got to review as a town council. So, would you consider R3 for it?
I'd rather have R4,
I know, but she said what would a
I mean, look,
recommendation?
it's like telling a motel developer, we don't want you to build any more than a 400. We want you to build a bigger room than 400 square feet.
I know that's what we just.
Because that's, all the motel rooms are pretty much 400 square feet.
That's what we just tell the gentleman.
If you do that, you run off your developers. And if you don't have developers, you're not gonna have anything happening in town. It's a matter of economics, whether or not a 600 square foot house is gonna work versus a 400 square foot.
And what he said was turnover was correct. So, it's basically like a big hotel room and you're gonna turn people over fast.
Yeah.
It happens to be detached. which
So
is
why would you
attractive.
want to put this in a neighborhood when you didn't agree with the one that we just denied?
Well,
That's what I'm
because-
saying.
Sure,
Yeah,
because the
but
other
the
one
same.
was in a predominantly R1 and this one's in industrial.
Mhm.
And so we have to decide as a town, what do we want our town to look like? And
We want a sand pit, or do we want tax creating businesses?
Plus, we're not behind McDonald's. We're, just a minute off the interstate, and it's back in the.
Well, now, you would have to do a traffic study too, because you're coming off the state highway, right?
Right.
It would be the same thing.
No, you're not coming off the state highway.
That isn't state
Coming off
highway that
Wells.
Wells Road comes off of?
Well,
That's where the
Wells Road
traffic
comes
would
off
go.
of the state highway, but
Yeah.
the development doesn't come off the state highway.
So would the
Wells
road,
Road goes to the project.
who would develop the road?
Well,
But
the
we can
road's
do a
already there.
traffic study regardless, because the RV park would want to be successful, and people can't maneuver the curve or the hill attaching to the state highway, it hurts the business. So we're gonna do the traffic study to make sure that road, people can get in and, pay
The
them.
sand dime.
All right, I have a question in the audience.
You still have.
Aren't we
We're
kind
still
of
in
putting
discussion.
the cart before the horse if we don't have an R4 category defined to create a motion to change a property to a designation that's not defined yet? It is defined. Oh,
We just could change that definition.
It's in
okay, I
the,
thought it wasn't approved as
it's
a-
in the
R4.
zoning ordinance.
It's in the zoning.
Okay.
There's a whole
I
section
thought-
about it.
We just don't have a property that has it in Mont Eagle yet.
Look at this way too. It needs to be R4 to be successful as a resort property. You've let two tiny homes, y'all have them, but the city has. 2 tiny home communities are outside the city limits right now, and they're renting homes there, and you're not getting any occupancy tax off of it, but I think you do provide water to one of them. But the city doesn't get a thing off of those developments. This is gonna be the first one in Mont Eagle proper where you can make money off of it. And all the problems that we have in this city need money to be, to address the problem. Studies, you gotta buy equipment, you gotta widen roads, you gotta do a lot of different things. You can't do it without money. And why would you let a motel build outside the city limits when you could have it in your city limits and get the occupancy tax? It's an economic decision for the city to have it in the city limits. It's an asset and it's a benefit. It's not a liability.
I understand the R4 thing and the 200 square foot, but I feel, me personally, that the city doesn't need R4. He could do the exact same thing in R3, gives us a little bit more leverage with it. Otherwise, they could just go put up a cup to it.
What leverage does it give you?
Well, I mean, if we don't put some kind of minimum square foot on here, why don't they just go put up a 10?
There is a minimum, it's 400.
Well, if we move it to R3.
It's not under R4. That's what we haven't defined that, that's what we're saying, Jay.
Yeah, this is an issue we've got to address.
So we can't, I mean, we're actually saying you can do whatever you want to. You put a 50-foot house out there and that's doing it. So, because we've been working on this while we've done assessments and the other things, so that's the reason we're saying, would you accept an R3? And when you can do RVs, you can do swimming pools, you can do a planned pub. We're just talking about a house size. A resort's good. We're not trying to, we're just saying how can we make, because we're not at that point yet, as far as the city council. And the city council won't be there that quickly either, because it has to go through several steps.
Let me ask you a question about the 600 square feet. Does that have to be on the roof in decks count?
I don't know.
Not, yeah, I think it's livable space.
How about screened-in porches?
I guess so.
I don't know, that's a Earl
That's
question.
something, you can put,
It's
you
HVAC
can
on
put
there.
furniture
Just
under
first
street.
little step and address these issues.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor to deny the change from an I1 to a R4. We have a second. Is there any amendments, or are we going to go for a vote?
Do you consider an R3?
What about it, John? It's up to you. It's up to you now.
If that's the way we're gonna get it, I'll have to adjust numbers, but, I wanna get further down the road and we go to R3, because if you come back and say, you gotta pave all these roads, we're out. I mean, I'm not gonna spend $100,000
That'd be your
a
decision
year.
to make.
Yeah, lots of bumps in the road here.
Yeah, there's bumps in the road. We wanna work with you.
That'd be your
I
decision.
don't really wanna build a 600 square foot structure, but if that gets it going here so we can make our point with everybody, we can try to do it.
At $200 a square foot, you're talking about $40,000 change per unit, so.
Or more.
And we're talking about moving them, we were talking
That's
about
not an
moving
issue with the
them.
planning commission, what the cost is now, Nate.
No.
I think
So,
we could use one.
would you, if you would consider R3, the recommendation of rezoning, that is a totally different situation than the R4 right now, because there's so many unknowns.
Let's make a motion to table. What do you say? Bring it up next time with an R3
I
request?
disagree, we need to deal with it now.
All right.
If this is the way we're gonna get your approval with R3.
Okay.
Then do I have an amendment to the motion?
Yes, I'll amend this motion to move with acceptance of R3 zoning, to move this to vote.
I need a second.
I'll give you a second.
Okay, we're gonna go roll call. So this, let me just rephrase this. We're moving the I-1 to an R3. Is that correct, commissioners?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, roll call.
Now, we're only talking about this parcel of property. There may be
This
other,
one.
of industrial, yes.
There's not any other industrial
Yeah, this is
property.
it.
The only one.
Okay.
Besides that little half acre I got in the corner over there, that's where I'm
You
gonna
have to
build
keep
that
it.
house, that yellow house. I moved it everywhere, I'm gonna move it out there.
Put it there. Richard Black,
Yes.
Janet Miller Schmidt,
Yes.
Ed Provo,
Yes.
Drain Permy,
Yes.
Peter Beasley,
Yes.
Marilyn Rodman,
Yes.
Ida Russell, yes. It's unanimous. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Woo!
$2 million.
Now, will you be, reading this again in 2 weeks at that meeting?
Oh, we have to make this recommendation.
It's a recommendation to the planning
Recommendation
commission.
to the plan, to the council.
Okay.
Well, I mean, how many times do you have to read it in?
It has to be a public hearing, and then it has to be read
2 times. We use